1. On my first summer back home from freshman year of college, I picked up a part-time job delivering pizza in a town around 30 minutes away from where I lived. The area, in rural Georgia, is known for having places that are in the middle of nowhere, and the pizza place's whole shtick was that it delivered to even the most remote areas imaginable within the town limits. I could fill books with the weird experiences that summer, from the call that came from a long-abandoned warehouse to the dog that got excited about the pizza in my hand and accidentally shredded my pants with her claws. But one will always stand out in my mind as the creepiest. It was getting fairly late at night, around 10:30 p.m., so I was confident at the time that I would be sent on no further calls before closing at 11. However, someone barely managed to miss the cutoff time, and our clerk accepted their order since they were so close. I was given the address and a single box of hot dough and sent on my merry little way. The first red flag was the driveway, or rather the lack thereof. There was a mailbox, but no actual driveway, not even gravel. It was just grass, and a barely distinguishable trodden pathway that resembled more of a service trail than it did something frequently used. I bumped along, wondering if I was even en route to the place, when I saw a slightly above-average-sized house come over the horizon. Horribly dilapidated and completely surrounded by overgrown woods, I guesstimated where the rest of the driveway led, and ended up parking in a grassy patch that could have been the walkway just as easily as it could have been the front yard. Headlights aimed towards the porch, as per company policy. I walked up to the door, but I believe that calling it a door is generous. It was a door frame, all right, but the door itself was just a large slab of wood propped haphazardly against the side of the house, barely covering the entrance. This was red flag number 2. The third and fourth red flags were also on the door. This included the A4 sheet of printer paper with the words, "Around back," scribbled in all caps, which was hanging just below the place where somebody had self-engraved the door with the title, "Manson Family Ranch." Typically, I would never go around the back of a house, especially a shady, unlit house, and especially at night. However, it was my last drop of the day, and I was ready to get it over with and be on my way home. Against my better judgment, I traipsed around the back of the house. The door back here was an actual door, but it was covered in both cobwebs and fresh spiderwebs. Clearly, this was a door that had not been used in some time. I found the cleanest area available and knocked. I counted to 45 and knocked again. There were no lights on in the house, and I could hear no movement from the inside. I knocked and counted again and repeated the sequence 3 more times before I was finally creeped out enough to decide to return to my car. As I turned, I finally heard a voice coming from inside the house, clearly agitated. But I couldn't tell what they were saying. I tried to knock 1 more time, and as I was counting, I heard something in the woods behind me. It started out as just movement deep in the trees, but soon enough I could make out distinct running footsteps coming directly towards me through the brush. As I'm standing there, coming to terms with my impending demise, I follow the direction of the noise to the edge of the woods, which is around 15 feet away from me. In the moonlight, I could clearly see the woman who stepped out. She was relatively old, maybe in her 60s, I would guess. She had long blonde gray hair, which was tangled and matted and hung down past her hips. She was in what looked to be originally a white nightgown, but at that time it was dingy and closer to a beigeish-brown color. She was absolutely barefoot, and her feet were covered in dirt and what had to be blood, presumably due to the fact that she had just sprinted through the prickly woods where there was no trail to be seen. I never learned her name, but I still affectionately refer to her as red flag number 5. She stopped short when she saw me and started to shake her head no, eyes wide. I stood there like a terrified deer in the most fucked up headlights ever, and she took a few more steps towards me. reaching out to me, finger pointed. Her voice came out way stronger than mine would have at the time when she spoke. You know how southern people can either sound like loving grandmothers or backwoods murderers? Well, she sounded like the latter when she drawled, "Oh, no, honey. No, you get on out of here." I wish I could say I listened. I ran. I left, but I was so in shock at how events were playing out that my own self-preservation was put on the back burner while I tried to figure out just what in Kentucky Fried Fuck was happening. She seemed to realize that I was not moving, even if I could not make my mouth move to ask her what was happening, or even what to do with the stupid pizza in my hands. She looked at me like she could have smacked the hell out of me right then and there, and proceeded to deliver red flags 6 through 12. "Darling, did you hear me? You deaf or dumb? Young girls like you come out here and then they don't get to leave." So I figure, quit being the white person in a horror movie, when I realized that this was not a funny little ghost story. This was 5'3", 160-pound me potentially being targeted to be robbed or kidnapped or worse. So I dropped the dumb little pizza, which had serious serial killer toppings by the way, and started running back to my car, which I had stupidly left on and unlocked. As was usual for most of my deliveries, as I neared the car I heard a slam from behind me, and I looked over my shoulder to see that the wooden door had been pushed over and had fallen into the porch beneath it. As I was closing the car door, an older man was limping down the front steps, waving his arms like an airplane runway attendant at me, calling me little bitch, telling me to get out of the fucking car now. At a loss for what to do, I called out something muttery and shaky and along the lines of, "Pizza's out back!" I floored my dad's shitty little 90s Lexus and somehow managed to avoid trees on the odd trail back to the main road, which was still 12 miles and several turns from any road that actually had a name, let alone painted lines. I reported it to my manager, and he said he contacted the police, but nothing ever came from it that I'm aware of. Either way, that was my first and hopefully last personal encounter with the self-proclaimed Manson family ranch. 2. Just a little background info on me, this is very pertinent. I'm 20 and have never dated, kissed, or even had any type of romantic conversations with any guy, so I tend to tense up a bit when guys flirt, and it honestly makes me very uncomfortable. The story began in August 2017. I was 18 and just was starting my first job at a call center. I'm a very outgoing and loud person once I'm comfortable, but when I walk into a place where I don't know anyone, I tend to look mean and cold. Since I am the embodiment of punctuality, I was late by a few minutes to my first day of training, so when I entered the room, I sat on the very last seat. However, the trainer told me to move to the front since there was an empty seat, so I did. And I had to sit next to this guy, let's call him Alex. So the training continued, and Alex would try to speak to me, and I was already late in my first day. I didn't want to be even more disrespectful and not pay attention, so I would respond with very short answers. Training lasted 1 month, and I never sat next to him again. Since I work at a call center, we have very strict break schedules, as we always need to make sure there are enough people on the phone. And since luck is always on my side, we were given the same lunch schedule. Our eating area doesn't have that many tables, and people obviously eat with their friend group. Since I was new, I obviously didn't have one, so I decided to sit on the table with all the newer employees, him included. Big mistake. I think he took this as a signal that I liked him, as 3 days after this he started texting me, since he had my phone number since we were on the training group chat. I would make my responses as short as possible since he made me very uncomfortable. He would say stuff like, "You sure you haven't had a boyfriend yet? You have the face of a girl who has at least fucked 3 guys," or, "You better hope that we are never in a room alone because I really want to make sure you're still a virgin." Once again, I am not experienced in sex, relationships, or anything related, so this made me extremely uncomfortable. I would try to avoid him at work. However, I started becoming friends with the other people at our lunch table, and for some reason I was ashamed of telling them all the stuff he was saying, so I just shut up. He would ask me out repeatedly over text and then started doing it during lunch in front of our other colleagues, and I always respectfully declined. He then started to make very passive-aggressive comments about how bitches think they're above everyone else and are gonna end up alone because they think no guy's ever good enough. Classic nice guy behavior. One day I was fed up and snapped during lunch, and came at him aggressively and told him that he was creepy and that I just wasn't attracted to him at all. And that was the reason why I'd never go out with him. He acted like the victim and everyone took his side because they didn't know all the crap he had been saying to me when they weren't there. A few weeks after this happened, I was minding my own business at my desk, and someone else from the table, let's call him Carlos, came to me and said, "Hey, we went past your house the other day." I was confused since I had been working at this place for about 5 months and never brought anyone home. And I was like, "What do you mean you don't even know where my house is?" To which he responded, "I don't, but Alex took us. He said he took you home once." Which freaked me out because it never happened. At this point, I thought Carlos was just messing with me until he started describing my house, and I just told him, "That's not my house." He extremely creeped out because he was giving me the exact description of my house. After this past incident, nothing really happened at work or through text messages. I stopped eating with the lunch group and just avoided him at all costs. At the beginning of 2019, he announced he was quitting, and I was honestly extremely happy. Even though he stopped harassing me, I still felt awkward and uncomfortable just knowing that we were in the same building. Now fast forward to March 2020. I have my Instagram profile set to public because I'm too lazy to go through requests, and I received a DM from him asking me out, and I obviously declined once again. Important note, I share a room with my 10-year-old sister, so I always leave the room at around 10 p.m. and go to the living room to watch Netflix or whatever, and return to the room to sleep at around 2 a.m. After this, he suddenly starts going on one of those "I'm a great guy and you're an ugly bitch who would be lucky to date me" rants, when all of a sudden, I hear a car pull up in front of my house and I receive a video chat request. Once the phone stopped ringing, I heard someone say, "Come out, you owe me this date," in a not too loud but loud enough to be heard tone. And I received a new video chat request. This kept going on for around 20 minutes until I heard the car leave. Ever since then, I am extremely paranoid whenever I am in the living room at night. 3. This happened last night and the night before. A little backstory first. I live in a not-so-safe area. The block I'm on is okay, but if I walk down my street a block or two, you could get shot, offered drugs, be mugged, and so much more. When we leave the house, we head up a side street that gets us away from trouble. Like I said, my block isn't bad. We all get along here, most people on this block are related to each other. All but for my household, but even though we are strangers to the neighbors, they are nice to us. The people right next door have dogs, as well as a few other households. Again, we are the odd ones out in that department as well. The dogs only bark when someone is out in our block that doesn't live here. I have always felt safer because of the dogs. I live in a home converted into a duplex. When you walk in the front door, you are in the entryway, and then across the entryway you see my apartment door. Then if you go up the stairs beside my door, you will find the door to the second apartment. The front door to the house has no lock mechanism at all. It's so tenants cannot lock each other out of the house. We can only lock the doors to our apartments. When you come into the entryway, a motion-sensing light comes on. No one is currently living in the upstairs apartment right now, so at this time it's just me and my husband living in the place. 2 nights ago, Hubs was in bed and I was up watching TV. I was all relaxed and thinking about going to bed soon. It was nearly 1 a.m. Suddenly I got this overwhelming, uncomfortable feeling. I felt hot and sick in my stomach, and I had the intrusive thought that I needed to check the apartment door to make sure it was locked. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't, so I got up to look. Just as I got there, I heard someone open the door on the outer house door. I looked and the door was locked. Then I heard the actual door to the house open, and someone step into the entryway. I was terrified. I know no one lives upstairs, and my landlord said he would let me know if someone was moving in. We don't get visitors this late or without a phone call first. Also, with this pandemic and social distancing going on, no one should be coming over. Then I heard a click. I recognized the click as the sound the motion light makes when it turns on. Then I hear a male voice say, "Oh shit," and the sound of someone running out of the house. I was terrified. I stood there trying to process what just happened. From the time I heard the screen door open until a solid minute after the person ran out, I stood there frozen. The neighborhood dogs were barking their heads off all that night, and they only do that if someone is around that they don't know. I think that someone who doesn't know that the house is a duplex attempted to let themselves in. The light, which is way too bright for that tiny entryway, came on and scared the person away. I woke up Hubs and we called the police. They said that since the person was not trying to get into my apartment exactly, they weren't coming out. The best they would do was drive by a few times. Yeah, real comforting. Last night I was again up late. The dogs were barking like crazy yet again. At a little after midnight I hear a noise. I mute the TV. I realize someone is pounding, not knocking, but full-on pounding on the outer house door. Not my apartment door, thank goodness. I was freaked out. I wanted to go in and wake up the Hubs, but thought better of it. There is a window beside the outer house door where he was knocking, and that window is our bedroom window. Because Hubs was sleeping and the lights were on in the living room, but off in the bedroom, I thought if I opened the door, the person standing on the porch hammering on the door would see the light, and then know someone was there, and I was afraid to let whoever was out there know someone was here. I sat here for over 10 minutes of banging. It was not stopping. I thought maybe it was the police because of the call I made the night before. So I called the police, told them what was happening, and about what happened the night before, and about my call to them the night before, and asked if it could be police at my door. He looked into it and said that as far as he could tell, no, whoever it was not police. He also said not to open the door. He said he was sending police out, and if someone was still banging on the door, they would talk to them. And he said he would call when he knew what was going on. The banging stopped about 5 minutes after hanging up with the police dispatcher, but I never got a phone call. So I don't know if the police ever showed up. Tonight the dogs are already barking, and I've been up for the past hour. My Hubs decided that I'm going to bed early, and he is staying up. I doubt I will sleep anyways. I made him promise that no matter what he hears, he won't unlock and open the front door. If there are any more shenanigans tonight, I will update here in this post. Quick question. Is it smart to not advertise the fact that we are here, not having lights on in the bedroom, and not going to the bedroom window to get a look at this person? Or maybe we make it clear that people do in fact live here. And who knows, it could have been 2 different people here on 2 consecutive nights at around the same time. I just hope to never meet this person. And yes, Hub slept through all this in both nights. He could sleep through anything. Update. Like you told me yesterday, Hub stayed up later last night. So when I go to bed alone, I put the TV on. It helps me fall asleep. As I said yesterday, our bedroom window looks out on the porch and is beside the outer door of the house. Well, the neighborhood dogs were barking like mad, but nothing happened. I'm thinking they realized that someone was home, and possibly awake. Normally Hobbs comes in to check on me, and if I am asleep turns off the TV, but he left it on until really late. So maybe they won't come back. Thank you for all your suggestions. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 496. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, as I said, I think last week, that last story there, I could have used some barking dogs, but of course, complete silence now. It is, however, in fairness, about 10 past 11 at night, so things are generally quieter here in the nighttime. Also, just a clarification. A lot of people suggested that the fireworks being let off could have been for Cinco de Mayo. We don't really celebrate Cinco de Mayo here in the UK, certainly not in Scotland. Also, it was on the 4th, and there had been fireworks like the previous recording day, which was either the 2nd or 3rd, so it certainly wasn't that. No idea what it was, no idea where they got them, unless they went into unless they went to a specialist fireworks shop, because you cannot get fireworks in the UK beyond certain times of year. It's usually for like a few days prior to certain events. Guy Fawkes Night, New Year's, that sort of thing. There, I think Chinese New Year's one of them as well. And yeah, I just can't think of why a fireworks shop would be exempt from the lockdown. Doesn't make sense. Well, okay. I'm gonna head off before I yammer on too much. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.